People always joke around that we literally have another country in our backyard because it's true. We literally split Niagara Falls right down the middle. Now, in this video, we're going to go over how close actually Canada is to Niagara Falls and Buffalo. If you're coming up here to either work, you live in Canada and want to work in Buffalo, or you're coming up to the Buffalo area because you want to be closer to family in Canada. Either way it goes, we're going to cover Buffalo to Canada, Canada to Buffalo, and possibly even Toronto right here in this video. Let's talk about it. What's going on, you guys? I hope all is well. As always, we are back with another video inside of Buffalo Living where we cover every single thing Buffalo on this channel, including right now, we're about to cover how close Canada actually is to Buffalo. Now, what actually made me shoot this video is because we actually get a lot of Canadians up here, especially when it comes to shopping, and I go to Canada to shop too, but when it comes to shopping and when it comes to work actually as well, people underestimate the amount of doctors, nurses that come from Canada to work here or in other professional fields like engineering, or maybe you want to work at Tesla or something like that. There's a lot of different people that move or live in Canada and choose to work in the Buffalo or surrounding areas. From Buffalo to Canada is only a 30-minute drive. It is not far by any means. Now, when it comes to Buffalo to Toronto, it's only about 2.5 hours away. That's an easy 2-album drive. If you got 2 good albums, you pop those on, you're at Toronto in no time. Just to make this a quick point, there's actually 2 bridges that you guys can cross when you're going from Buffalo to Canada or Niagara Falls to Canada. Now, the Peace Bridge is going to be in the Buffalo area. So let's say you're closer to like Fort Erie area, you're probably going to use the Peace Bridge a lot more. That's literally probably an 11-minute drive, 15-minute drive, not including your border time. So what do I mean by border time? How long is you sit there in order to cross into the US or cross and back into Canada, depending on where you're coming from. So if you're closer to Fort Erie, you'll probably use the Peace Bridge a lot more. Now, if you're in Niagara Falls, remember Niagara Falls is split in 2, US side and also the Canadian side. You're probably going to use the Rainbow International, which then is an easier drive for people going into Niagara Falls, or depending really on where you're going, if you're heading into Amherst, things like that. But if you're closer to, you know, that Mississauga, or you're in that Niagara Falls area, coming over from like the Clifton Hills area, you're probably going to use the Rainbow International. Personally, I don't, even when I go to Canada, I don't use the Peace Bridge. I like the Rainbow International. It's a lot newer. To me, it's a lot safer. Not saying that the Peace Bridge isn't safe for you guys is about to trip out, but to me, it's a lot newer. It's newly built. They have more lanes opened up. It's easier for me to cross over into Canada using the Rainbow Bridge. So I'll take that half-an-hour trip up. That's why if you hear me reference it a lot, it's just subconsciously I'm always taking that Niagara Falls route to get into Canada. And it's closer to the Clifton Hills. It's closer to Toronto. It's just that easy half-an-hour drive driving through. And we'll get into this a little bit later as far as the real estate, how cheap it is, especially compared to Toronto prices right now, or even Fort Erie prices right now are crazy compared to what you can get in the Buffalo and Niagara area. Now, you can get to Canada in a few different ways. Obviously, we already talked about driving not too long, but a lot of people don't know you can actually catch a Greyhound going to Canada as well, or even Toronto as well. Especially if you go in Toronto, say you drinking or you know you're gonna have a long weekend. Literally a one-way ticket going to Toronto is only between $20 to $30. Crazy. So you're spending max $60 in total to hop on a Greyhound to go to a whole nother country and have a good time at that. Now, if you don't want to waste your time or save 2 hours, you know, driving yourself, hop in a car. Obviously, I don't know many people who will come to Buffalo just to fly into Toronto. I personally wouldn't do that. I mean, you're spending a lot more money than you need to. Now, a lot of people have been coming up to the Buffalo area from Canada for work. I know many doctors and nurses that are looking for jobs in the Buffalo area. We have some of the best research institutions like ECMC, Roswell, Buffalo General. Those top 3 alone, a lot of Canadians are looking for work inside the Buffalo area. But a lot of people are actually moving up here. I know a few people, even when I was an engineer, I had a guy who worked at me. He was another engineer. He would work up here 5 days. He would go home on the weekends. He had a nice little rental apartment when in the Buffalo area or Amherst area where he was working, and he was just staying up here. He'd go home on the weekends. It was tough for him, but it was a lot better pay. It's just getting his foot in the door, and it was a lot better opportunity for him to move his family up to the Buffalo area or in the USA when he had the opportunity to do so. So honestly, depending on where you're working, it really will depend on which bridge that you guys are taking, traveling back and forth. And the reason why I say that is because I know the city is a little more packed when it comes to after work hours. So if you're trying to, you got to think, you're going basically downtown to get into the Peace Bridge. So the city is going to be packed at that 5-6 o'clock time. You heading up to Niagara Falls, if you can beat that rush hour heading over the Grand Island Bridge and then going into Niagara Falls, you're golden. Best thing I can always tell you, Google map that thing. See which best route to take at that specific time that you coming in or out of the border. Now, you can't stay in Niagara Falls. It's a lot shorter. Not the same environment. I can tell you that now. Unless you're above 50th Street or east of Hyde Park, that's when it gets a little bit nicer, closer to the outlet, Military Road, Niagara Falls Boulevard, those areas like that. You guys know me, I don't downplay anybody's areas. That's just being very honest. When you get into Little Italy, it get a little tough over there. I can tell you that straight up. Now, the second type of occurrence I see is people moving up to the Buffalo area who want to be closer to family members who live in Canada, whether that's Fort Erie, Toronto, whatever may have you. For example, had a client just moved up from North Carolina. They moved into the Niagara Falls area. They are now only 40 minutes away from their son compared to 16 or 11 hours away from their son being down in North Carolina. So that is a huge difference, and I see a lot more people doing that these days, especially living on the US side and then just traveling over. They get, I forget what it's called, I think this is Express Pass or something like that, that you can get to jump across. It's an Express Pass. I can't think of what the exact term is right now. It's gonna come to me later. It's gonna bother me. Nonetheless, that's what a lot more people are doing now. This all depends on your lifestyle. Do you want to be in Niagara Falls, or do you want to be in Buffalo? So that's something that you guys want to think about. Where do you want to live? Are you looking to rent or buy? This is also big too. When it comes to Niagara Falls and Buffalo or Amherst or one of the suburbs, those lifestyles are going to be different, especially when you talk about the suburban areas. And then also the school system that you guys want to have your kids into. So if you guys are moving up here because of family and that you want to be closer to Canada and you want to stay on this side, think about your lifestyle. That's something I always ask my clients. Do you want to be in a city or do you want to be in a suburban area? We could figure out your budget from there and then what you want to do. And then also the commute time that you actually want to have from your family. So when it comes to real estate here, I was just looking at this, what you can get, and even Fort Erie, I'm talking about not even big Toronto, Fort Erie is still probably $100,000 to about $150,000 more than what you can get in the Buffalo area, especially the Niagara Falls area. So that's what a lot of people are thinking about as well. Even if you're Canadian trying to buy in Buffalo, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but the hardest part is going to be your American credit unless you're coming in here paying cash. But the cheapest I've seen in Fort Erie, literally the cheapest I've seen just outside of Niagara Falls, Ontario, was $387,000 American dollars. So I think it's, what is it, $1 for every point. I think it's like 75 cents to the American dollar for Canadian dollars. So you can do the math on that. It's much more affordable to buy a house in the Buffalo area than it comes to not anything in Canada right now. And those areas, those numbers, that 387, that 473, those are for like two bedroom, one bath condos. Like that wasn't even for full houses. There was a couple of 3-bedroom, 1-bath cars that I've seen over there, but a lot of those houses are much more expensive. Rent was generally around the same. I mean, we were probably a couple $100 lower than they were for 1 and 2 bedrooms. I think 2 bedrooms over there are about $1,700. Ours probably right now, depending on where you are, it's probably like $1,200 to $1,500. If you're in Niagara Falls, it's probably much less. But either way it goes, to purchase here is still a lot more cheaper than it is in any Canadian Providence or Canadian area that I've seen. Now, when it comes to buying a home in the Buffalo area, remember guys, if you guys are looking to pay cash, it's still going to take around 30 about 30 to about 45 days to close. So, and 60%, I did my research, 60% of Canadian buyers or just non-foreign buyers in general are paying cash when they purchase in the US. So if you guys are coming up here looking to pay cash, hey, you can do that, not a problem. But if you guys are taking out a mortgage or plan on taking out a mortgage up here, there is a little bit of a delay. The biggest thing with that is the American credit. You can't get a mortgage in the USA without American credit, and that's where I see a lot of trip up. I just had another client come up here. Well, we talked and we were trying to get him pre-approved so that they can get a house. He's working at ECMC right here in the Buffalo area. With him, he's on a J1, which is a student visa work, student work visa. You cannot get a mortgage with a student work visa. A lot of people have been, once they move up here, they immediately start to build their credit, and this can sometimes be a 2-year plus journey. So if you guys are Canadian and you don't have your visa right away, but you're still trying to get a home here, you gotta work on your credit or you're gonna have to pay cash. Now, there is something called the free trade agreement, the North American free trade agreement, that you can literally live in the US. You can buy a house here, but you can live up here for 6 months at a time inside a physical year. That's a little tricky of a complication. I wouldn't really get into that. I'll try to put out a second video when it comes to buying a home as a Canadian buyer in the Buffalo area. But again, the biggest thing is going to be American credit unless you guys are paying cash. But I'll see if there's any other ways that we can get that done. I know there's a very few lenders, very specialized lenders that actually specialize in that, but they might take you through the ringer to be able to get those type of loans, or you may have a really high interest rate and a big down payment to make. If that's you and you can make that, hey, let's talk. Let's try to get that done. Either way it goes, if you guys are moving up here or already in the area looking to buy another home or sell your current one, my name is Devonte Davis, the local realtor in and around the Buffalo area. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, make sure you guys hit me up with a call, email, text, and I will get to you guys ASAP. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys inside the next one.